Greeting YouTube. I own this house. Well, at this point, I own about a third of this house. But hopefully someday I'll own the whole house. And I do not have a membership in an HOA, a Home Owners Association. And I wouldn't have moved into an area that required me to be a member of an HOA. Giving that kind of power to people who aren't you over your property, who could quite likely end up being little tin martinettes, not my idea of a good time. I remember hearing a story once where a guy got himself voted onto the board of the HOA, gamed the system till he was put in charge, and then called for a measure to disband the HOA, and the two people that helped him get in there seconded it, and they disbanded the HOA, and they just all walked away. Beautiful move. But HOAs are fundamentally racist. Why do I say that? You see, they didn't exist prior to an era where black people started to move into good neighborhoods. Now, I've talked about redlining before, but some people aren't aware of it. The idea that institutions, both officially and unofficially, would move and direct minorities away from jobs and loans and homes that should go to good white people. Now, if a white person didn't have the greatest credit history, they might say, oh, we'll cut you a break. Whereas a minority person might have a better credit history, but because they're black and the neighborhood folks don't want a black person moving into onto their block, so they don't get the house. Whereas the white person with the worst credit history might. I heard of a story recently in Indianapolis where a black woman had her house assessed so she could put it on the market and didn't think that the assessment had really shown the true value. So she removed all indications from the house that a black person or black people lived there, and then had a white friend be the person for the next assessment, which came out $100,000 higher. Now, you could say that the two assessments were done by different people, so maybe that takes into account why one person judged it as $100,000 less than the other. But $100,000, man, $100,000, that's a big chunk of change, and that's a big margin of error. It's very likely that this is an act of redlining, of undervaluing the property owned by black people. So they don't get as much out of it. They don't get to establish generational wealth. And the HOAs were all part of that. They were part of making sure that white neighborhoods remained white neighborhoods. Also Christian. They would also help direct Jewish people to places other than their backyard. Not in my backyard. NIMBY. It's a wonderful acronym. Is NIMBY an acronym or an initialization? I can never. Probably an initialization. NIMBY's not a real word, I don't think. So I would never be a member of an HOA. Again, as I said, I don't want someone else to have a right to tell me that I should have to mow my lawn. I have not mowed my lawn personally, I've never mowed my lawn. And my wife hasn't mowed the lawn in, I don't know, a year. And I don't give a shit. I have a side yard which I have let go completely natural. In the middle of a block, there's a little plot of land which has gone completely wild. And I am 100% okay with that. I do not care. I don't care how much crabgrass is out there. I don't care how high the weeds grow. I just don't care. It means nothing to me. I didn't buy this place to have a lawn. I bought this place so I have a place for my books and my tools and me and my wife and my cats and my mother-in-law and her cat and my stuff and a sense of safety. And none of that has anything to do with my lawn or lack thereof. So I would never have an HOA. I told that flat out when I went to my buyer, because we got a buyer which is a specialized type of realtor who only buys homes, so that they do not deal in selling homes. So they're not trying to push you into their own, selection, their own inventory. Go to a buyer if you want a house. You're going to get a much more decent, honest deal out of that than going to a traditional realtor. Unless you have a brother or sister that's a realtor, then I guess you go to them. So, yeah, HOAs are horrible. They're another offshoot of white supremacy in America. What a shock. Because it's everywhere. It is in the very fabric of our being. Remember, this country was founded on slavery, on bigotry, and on genocide. And you can't ever forget that. I can tell you right now, the minorities living here, black people and brown people and yellow people and red people, they don't ever forget it. But white people can. We don't have to think about it because it doesn't affect us. Guess what? We need to face it, and we need to tackle it, and we need to eliminate it because we're the ones that created it. We're the ones that have to dismantle it. Minority groups, it's not their goddamn job. They're tired of it. They've been talking about this stuff for 400 years and no one's listened. Well, some of the white folks are listening in the last 50 or 60 years. And the numbers seem to be growing. So let's hope that eventually we'll actually change some shit. I sure hope so. But in closing, HOAs are horrible. Don't ever become a member. You will much, much regret that. You will not like it in the least. Letting someone else have control over your life just because you have chosen to live on their block. That doesn't sound like land of the free and home of the brave.